Okay, I think everybody's in there. Are we ready to begin? Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the National American Indian and Mental Health TTC K-12 School Supplement. I'm Teresa Brewington. I'm the program manager, and I'm with Julia Bullitt. She is the graduate research assistant that works with me. I'm glad to see everybody here. I am the program manager, as I said, for the MHTTC K-12 program. I'm an enrolled member of the Kahari tribe and a descendant of the Lumbee tribe. I live here on the Meskwaki settlement in Iowa. I've been working with Native Americans and people of colors my entire career. My last position was that of a school principal before I came here. And I just want to say that I love working with my Native peoples. Julie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Julia Bulwitt. I am a clinical mental health counseling student at the University of Iowa. So that's how Teresa and I have come to work together. I mainly work on the K-12 grant. So I've been working with the Native schools and kind of assisting Teresa in all of her initiatives this semester. So really grateful to be here with you all. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Julia. I just want to say that we are a national organization and we provide training series nationally to American Indian and Alaska Natives. We have other centers, but we are the only nationwide mental health technology transfer center that offers technical support, trainings, education, and resources specifically for Native Americans and Alaska Natives. This is SAMHSA's disclosure. The American Indian Alaska Native Mental Health Technology Transfer Center is supported by a grant through SAMHSA. And I have to say that this content of the webinar is the creation of the presenter, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian and Alaska Native, MHTTC. If you are a mental health worker, we are providing CEUs. In fact, if you want a CEU from today's webinar, just reach out to us and we'll make sure you get that. And also today's presentation handouts will be provided for you. We will be giving you an evaluation at the end of this webinar. Please make sure just to take just a few minutes to fill it out because we really want to hear your opinion, how helpful this webinar was for you, and looking forward to what you may have as we go forward and offering more webinars and sessions. You'll be muted for the duration of the webinar. You could use the chat feature to share whatever you need. Also, to make comments about the presentation if you like. Please use the chat box. Myself and Julia will be glad to stop Larry as he's going through the presentation and ask him questions. We also are going to use the last maybe 10 minutes or so just for Q&A. Also, just be mindful, we are recording today's event so that we could share it on our YouTube channel and on our website. So today's session is called COVID-19, Socio-Emotional Mental Health. And I'm also glad to announce we have been doing COVID series weekly until the first of the year and then bi-monthly beginning of this year. After March, we are going to be doing a lot more. I think that we are COVID out. I think we've completed about everything we can about COVID. So I'm looking forward to doing a lot of other trainings, sessions, talking circles, and a lot of other great things coming forward starting March. So today's speaker is Larry Spotted Crow Man, and he is a citizen of the Nipmuc tribe. Is that correct, Larry? Did I get it correct? Okay, yep. Good. He's an award-winning writer, culture educator, traditional storyteller, tribal drummer, dancer, and a motivational speaker involving youth sobriety, culture, and environmental awareness. He is a co-founder of the Culture Center. Thank you.
I know the Nipmuc words, right?
And founder of the Native Youth Empowerment Foundation. He also serves as the reviewer committee member at the Native American Poets Society at the Peabody Museum. He travels throughout the US, Canada, and parts of Europe to schools, colleges, powwows, and other organizations sharing his music, culture, and history of his people. He has also given lectures at universities throughout New England on issues ranging from Native American sovereignty to identity. Thank you for that. We are very glad that you're here today, Larry. If there are any consultants, advisors, anybody from our staff that is on here today, I don't see you. So if you're here, please speak up, introduce yourself if you feel comfortable in doing so. We always want to acknowledge our consultants and advisors. Also, I'm going to give the audience a chance to, if they would like, do a blessing, song, poem, a few words of wisdom, play an instrument, whatever you're feeling. This is open to anyone in the audience, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to respond. As someone is thinking about doing that, if you can just put in the chat box where you're from and where you work. So nobody is in the mood to chat today. Hi, Mike. How are you? Hi, Dean. I see you there.
It looks like we also have Ray Daw on the call.
Oh, good.
Sorry,
Wonderful.
Teresa, I was muted. It's good to see you. Good to be here.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Doing really well.
How is it up there your way? Is everything
Oh,
under
it's
control?
fine. It's sunny and rainy and typical Oregon coast. Yep.
And how is COVID?
We just moved down into the high risk. We were at extreme risk for a while, but we're talking about going back to school. They're moving in that, definitely moving in that direction.
Have they started giving the antibodies?
Oh yes, yeah. Injections are going.
Yeah. Yeah, funny you say that. They are going to start school here March 1st. We were going 2 days a week, half a days, and now they're going to go 4 days a week, half a days for preschool, and then they're going to go 4 days a week, 4 days for everybody else. So.
Well, it'll be very, very good for the students and also a tremendous relief for some of the parents.
Yep, absolutely sure. Yeah, and that's one of the things about COVID, unfortunately. We are going to see some aftermath. Children are getting behind, as we all know. So, yeah. I see that Ray Daw is here. Ray, if you'd like to say a few words, I'd welcome that. Ray is one of our major contributors and advisors. He's been working with us for a lot of years, way before I got here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Teresa, to say a few words. I'm from Navajo Nation, the Gallup, New Mexico area, and that's where I'm from. My clans are Kia'ani, Tlazatlana, Tsidnachini, and Totoconja. Those are my clans from the Navajo side. As Teresa mentioned, I've been working with the center for a while on the advisory board, and one of our colleagues is online, Sarah Begay from Greasewood. So in referring her to this webinar, I decided to join up also and make sure I got the same grounding information she does from the great presenter you have online. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad you're here, Sarah. I hope you enjoy this. Larry, you're under pressure now. I'm just looking through to see if we have anybody else that would like to say hello. And if not, we will give it over to Larry and let him begin. I hope everybody's well. I hope your families are well and safe. It is a beautiful day here in Iowa. I don't get to say that very much, but it is absolutely a sunny 60-degree day, I believe there, Julia, instead of the negatives. So I'm very, very happy about that. So, yeah. Okay, Larry, if you're ready, we're ready for you.
Akuni, good PM. I am thrilled to be here with you all today. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Julia, for organizing this. I know it was a little touch and go for a while, but we managed to get it together, and we're all here together today. I'm really happy, and it's an honor to have tribal people from across the country here sharing and being a part of this. I'm honored, and I hope that in this talk we can share things in a reciprocal way that will benefit all of us in a good way. And the most important thing I need to share is the words in my language, and offer that prayer. So we say in our Nipmuc language, and I'll talk a little bit about my land and where I am and who I am. I think that's important to set the stage. And so we say in Nipmuc, "Wun nashana tumu manatu tabatni, watu chikinisen okumis tabatni wuchi supposu, usukatia huuna notas ninema menantium, kin nota yiu plantaminok, and meo ninema me quantam kicha, ka mata wanantam. Ka nagutie kokuta ninawa manatu usukatie huana o manetio ka nosokomuso amoke ninaho kankanto chokesiche yayo. I greet you in the words of peace in my Nipmuc language. I greet you in the words that we ask that our ancestors and relatives come and share this space with us in a good way, and that the exchanges that we have and that we are sharing our breath. And when I talk to non-native people, when I tell them, you know, when we say in our language, the Nipmuc language, breath, it means spirit, because the words and the breath are synonymous. And so when we speak, when we talk about telling the truth, it's our breath and our spirit that we are sharing. So when we share these words, they are part of our honor, they're a part of us. And so when we say that we are sharing our breath, and we ask that we share that in a good way. And so it's a real honor to be here. And I saw Teresa agreed. The Algonquin words here are hard to say if you're not used to them. And so we are fortunate to be able to still share our words in our language and kind of, you know, represent ourselves in our language, which is really important to ground us back to the land. So again, in English, I am Larry Spotted Crow from the Nipmuc Nation. I'm a cultural educator, writer, poet. And I also worked in mental health in the early part of in my younger years. I worked about 8 years in a mental health facility on a forensic psychiatric unit. And that was quite a learning experience. Really enjoyed that work, and I got to learn a lot about mental health and, you know, doing a lot of work with the DSM-4. What is it, DSM-5 now? I don't know. I can't.
DSM-5.
Yes, see. And so I have quite a bit of experience in that field, and it really helped me in my work as I've been working for the past 30 years in social justice, tribal recovery, and language, culture, tradition, and most importantly, my work with tribal youth around sobriety. And so I want to, I'm just going to shift for a minute and share my screen. Just kind of, I'm going to share a little bit about my background before we get into the, okay, how do I share screen here? Share screen thing. And
yeah, at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, you should see a green button that says share screen.
I got it.
Awesome.
Okay. So you guys can see that there?
Yes, we can.
So as I said, I'm from the Nipmuc people, the Nipmuc Nation here in Central Mass, and I'm going to show a map of that in a second. But as I said, I've been doing this work for about 3 decades now. And just before the pandemic, I was in Ecuador sharing at the University of Cuenca. We were there for about a month, and incidentally, right? I mean, people were starting to wear masks on the plane, and I was like, what is this about? You know, and so it was just hitting, and it was really crazy because Ecuador, it was just really jarring. They got it really bad, and you know, you were seeing footage of bodies in the streets. I mean, this was literally after a week we left Ecuador. We left Salinas, so it was quite a great experience down there. Unfortunately, COVID, but And so that was my last trip. And some of these photos you're looking at here are in various tribal nations, like to the far right, that's me at Forest County, Potawatomi. I've been there a few times and I really enjoyed sharing with the youth there. And to the far left, that's my time when I was in Greenland, sharing with the Inuit youth there. That was probably one of the most remarkable experiences I had, sharing culture and tradition with the Inuit people there. And yeah, it was a very mesmerizing experience. And some of the other photos are various libraries and institutions. And the lower corner there, it's one of my little cousins there from our nation that I was sharing with. So I'm gonna jump over to this screen here.
Larry, do you want to show your slideshow in slideshow view, or does it matter to you?
I would if I knew how to do it, but I think, can you see this next slide?
Yeah, we could see it.
Okay, that's fine, because I'm just gonna jump around a little bit. I'm not gonna show
Okay.
all these. So here, for those who are not familiar, as you see Nipmuc right there, and that's Massachusetts. And originally our tribal homeland was 2,000 square miles, encompassing 4 states. As you see, it goes up to the tip of New Hampshire, northern Connecticut, and northern Rhode Island. And so, and this little guy, that's my latest addition. I have 4 children, and I have 3 grown boys, ages 24, 25, and 26. And I love kids so much, I decided to do it again. And so this is my little guy, and if I survive him, that'd be another story. And so, and I want to jump here again, talking about the legacy of my family. I'm the son of the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. As we know, or some may not know, Native peoples are the highest enlisted in the U.S. military per ratio of people. And my family is certainly no exception, as we have relatives in the Revolutionary War. My great-great-grandfather and all his cousins and brothers were there. And this document I'm showing you here is that my great-great-grandfather, when he died of disease in the Andersonville prison during the Civil War, they were usurping his land and taking his children to boarding school. So you see the documents there. And so while he's fighting for the country, this is what's happening to our people. And I wrote a poem about that called Get Over It. And it was just really jarring. And here's a picture of my great-grandmother, Lucy Vickers. And Vickers is a large name in our tribal community. And there you see her birth date there. She died the year I was born. And she was a traditional healer. And I would ask my grandfather about her. I says, well, what kind of garden did she have? And he would laugh and say, she just go into the woods. And she knew exactly what to get. And I think about the knowledge that we have and the lack of knowledge that we have. And my grandfather would say, imagine being downtown in New York City and they took away all the street signs and you weren't from there. He said, and that's how we feel when we walk into the forest. We're seeing all these different things and we don't know what we're looking at because this colonialism took away the signs that we used to know. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So that's, I'll stop sharing there. So that's my family, the Vickers family is one of my main Nipmuc families. And so it's a real honor to be able to be here and share in their memory and share in their voice and have that strength to draw on as I go forward. And as I said, it's been about 30 years and it's been quite a journey for me in terms of my own personal recovery, which I want to share as well. So when I grew up in Western Mass of Massachusetts, and me and my siblings are what we call first generation city because my mom and all the generations prior grew up in traditional enclaves, or as I say, in the woods, away from a white civilization. So they never had to deal with any white people other than the local farmers. So there's very limited contact with white people. And so my mom, when she met my dad, they moved to the city, Springfield. And this was in the 70s and 80s when I was born in 67. And so me and my siblings, my 2 brothers are older than I, and we moved into a predominantly Black neighborhood. And so my mom, of course, she had no insight how to navigate this urban life, right? But, you know, it was exciting for her as a country girl to go to the city at that time. It was a big deal, you know, for her. But us as kids, we had no idea how to navigate that. So it was a predominantly Black neighborhood, but we were really treated as outsiders. And then by the time I hit junior high, we were bussed out to these white schools, and the situation got even worse because you know, the black kids were in fear of dealing with all that, and they would flip the buses over, and the junior high was in the white neighborhood. So God forbid you miss that bus. And I was just sharing with somebody earlier, during my youth, I became good friends with this refugee young man from Laos. And because it seemed like we didn't, as Native people, fit in to the black or white, we were just like some kind of, you know, analogy, you know, some kind of like weird anomaly that people couldn't understand. So me and this young Laos boy, we were great friends, and I'll never forget, when we were walking home there, and we were attacked, and you know, he was called Chink, and they were yelling at me with sticks and hit me with a bottle, calling me all kinds of horrible names I don't even want to repeat because they're recording it. But and so these kind of experiences led me to like really doubt anything. And I remember my mom trying to get us to go to powwows, and you know, being picked out and called savage and canoe jockeys, and you know, it was really a hard time. And my oldest brother Troy, his nickname was Injun Joe. And anybody from that area, they know from the story of Huck Finn and Tom's story, Injun Joe was this crazy Indian stabbing people, and he was just really bad guy all around. So that's, you know, we're really synonymous with a pejorative, you know. And so this quickly led me to abusing myself, right? I began drinking and doing drugs at an early age. By the time I was 15, 16, you know, and I was somebody who really loved school, astronomy, and science. But of course, this drinking and drugs was impeding that, you know, and so quickly it began to destroy my life. And by the time I was 20, I was near dead. And you know, and it was really just crazy how this whirlwind of things I was doing to myself. And I'll never forget. And you know, and the story goes, I remember that day when I had drank so much alcohol. It was I can't remember now. What was it? Was it it's been so long ago now. Was it E&J or that? No, it was I'm kind of glad I don't remember the names of these boozes, but Jack Daniels. Yes, it was a whole gallon of Jack Daniels. I drank it all and was in the hospital with alcohol poisoning and near death. And so I remember they're laying there in the bed, you know, and you know, hooked up into the IV and all that, near death, and you know, and I'll never forget, the TV was on. And you know, me being an inquisitive kind of person, I'm kind of watching it, and of all the things that were on, it was a PBS special about Christopher Columbus, and how we and the narrator got to the part about how the Europeans brought alcohol to the native people, and how it summarily ravaged and destroyed and annihilated every fabric of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to this, and I still to this day can't put the words together about what went through me, but I got this cold chill that went all the way down my back. I wanted to cry, I wanted to scream, and I never thought about alcohol in that way. It was just really blowing my mind to watch this this documentary about alcohol. And it went on, and I just got this cold chill, and I got out of that hospital. I never drank again after that. I never drank again after that day, and I came out and I began scratching my head in this post-apocalyptic fog, like, what the hell's going on? You know, why have we been treated like the outsiders on our own land? Why am I being abused by people who just got to this country? Why am I being treated like some kind of anomaly? You know, what's wrong with me? What, you know, what did I do to deserve this as a human being? I was like born to suffer. Like, what is this about? And I went back to my grandfather and started asking some real questions, you know, and that began my journey to not only healing myself, but then be able to kind of work and gain this knowledge, this cultural and traditional knowledge to heal my own spirit. And actually, March 2nd is my anniversary of my sobriety, which will be 31 years of sobriety. Thank you. And I kind of laugh sometimes when people say, "Damn, you were just becoming legal and you quit." I said, "Well, yes, I was that bad." And that's my journey. And ever since then, and ever since that day I came out of that hospital, I never wanted to see another Native kid go through what I went through. You know, I raised 3 boys. I'm raising another one now, and children, and they grow their hair long. They've had it long, and I made sure all through their schooling, I went to those teachers and said, these are Nipmuc boys, and this is their culture, and I would give these little classes, right? And so that kind of began my journey in teaching Indigenous education, and I was learning it not in places in the school, because the school was the place of where they were trying to deny who we were. And I talk quite a bit about kindergarten to college, primarily, that there was no education around Indigenous epistemology. And the way I was taught to feel in my junior high and elementary classes, that I was some kind of this hapless bystander benefiting from white proximity, that my people had nothing to offer. Indigenous people didn't show up in the history. George Washington, Lincoln, Quincy Adams, the Battle of Bunker Hill. You don't hear about the Nipmuc people or the Indigenous people. They mention Massasoit once, then the next time Indians show up, it's Sitting Bull. And so they escape over 200 years of history and survival of the praying towns and their removals and all the different things and the wars and things that we went through right here under their own feet. And so this is the destruction that's left in its wake, the abuse and the pain and the suffering that kids like myself have to go through because of that denial, the right to exist. And so that's what my work has been prefaced on, is like kind of undoing the damage and being that leader and being that voice, and using my body and my spirit and the things that I've learned to share and inspire others to kind of gain that. And in these years, I've managed to write 3 books. My second book was a bestseller and won a national award for the Native Circle of American Writers. That was this book here, The Morning Road to Thanksgiving. However, my first book, Tales from the Whispering Basket, a collection of short stories and poetry. And my latest book, Drumming and Dreaming, talks about our traditional tales. And this is what it's really about really gaining that self back of these stories and reminding us about place. And I'll go into that in a little bit. And my latest book, Drumming and Dreaming, and also we do a lot of work with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and we create a curriculum for middle school children. I mentioned that to Teresa when we talked initially. It's called Circle Tied to Mother Earth. And this curriculum here is based on our traditional tenets and teachings, along with the life skills training, so that we can have a comprehensive teaching of our youth, of our community, of our people, to meet the needs that they have. For example, when I was a kid, there was nothing talking about the plant life, nothing talking about our relationship to the animals, to the sky, to the stars, and to the land and the stories itself. That was all ripped away because, as we know, the skies became Greek, right? They speak Greek now. I didn't know that. The land became English. So where is our language? And again, as I opened up in my language, without that language, which is my late cousin, who unfortunately we lost during his time, he was the language of the land. And so we are speaking the language of the trees, because we don't just say trees. In our language, we say the thing that gives us warmth, shelter, protection, and life. And this is our brother. And speaking of which, we're sugaring right now. I don't know about other parts of the country, but right now it's maple sugaring time. So we're out there tapping and putting our tobacco down to making that offering to those maple trees. And there's a beautiful story behind that, because long ago the people were greedy and taking all that sugar. So now you have to get all this water before you get a little bit of maple syrup to remind us to be patient, to remind us to not take so much. So I digress. And so yeah. So that's a lot of that work there that I do, and also I am the director of the Okitayo Cultural Center, and I'm going to jump back to the slides and share that. Let's see here. Go here, there, share, and you saw that one. I'm going to jump around. As you see, I have these many slides here for various. Where's that? It might be in the, let's see, I think it's in the other one. I apologize. It's the, and if anybody has any questions about anything I shared. All right. For some reason, those slides aren't in this piece. I think they might end up in the other one. But if anybody has any questions while I'm trying to look through these slides here.
I want a question, but I don't want to distract you if you're going to be looking through the slides, Larry, but I do have a question.
Okay.
A lot of things that you said about your history resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of other Native people, because we've all have experienced that sort of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it is definitely trauma, and it affects us because these things have affected who we have become. And even today, in the year 2021, you know, we are still being faced with some of these things. You know, we've had, just like you've written a book, you're telling your story, you know, there's been, you know, some research on this, but I'm really looking into how we heal our people from this. Even today, I see myself struggling with these things, and I have to catch myself when I realize I'm still struggling with some things that has happened to me from my past. So how do you suggest we do this? I know how I did it for myself, but for other people that are out there, because we want to be good people. Everybody wants to be good people. Everybody wants to be successful. But a lot of us just didn't have like what you had, which was that awakening that changed your life. Otherwise, you may not be here today.
Absolutely.
And I had something very similar. Whereas I had somebody break my spirit, literally break my spirit and made me feel worthless. I had one person in my life that changed that for me. And if it had not been for that person, I probably wouldn't be here today. So my question is how do we teach our young people to heal? Does that make sense? And then I don't know that you can even answer that. I'm just, it's something I still, even as an adult, I struggle with it. I get down and I get, it's kind of like PTSD. It goes back to those things that happened to me in my past. And I see it interfering with some of the things in my future or in my present, if I'm making sense.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful question, Teresa. And I'll tell you, I've had this conversation with many folks, many times young folks, and folks can see that I have that slide up now, but I want to certainly answer that. So, and I'll tell you a story. I was with a young person, and they were saying kind of the same thing. Somebody was making them feel like nothing, and I said, okay, let's take a walk, and we went out to the woods, and I'm not far. There's a lot of woods around here, luckily still. And I said, okay, I want you to look around and start telling me some of the things you see. And the youngster was like, gave me a funny look. I said, no, just look around. Be very observant. Just tell me what you see. So oh, there's a squirrel. So okay. And next thing you know, they looked around again. They saw this bee buzzing around, getting on some flowers and wildflowers. And they saw, oh, there's a bee over there on the plant. I said, okay, let's stop right there and start talking about that. So what's that squirrel doing? They said, oh, the squirrel looks like it's gathering nuts and, you know, building a nest up there and doing all this creative stuff. I said, yeah, it's true. I said, well, how about that bee? What's that bee doing? I said, the bee is gathering pollen. And the kid was really excited to tell me how they learned that in class about how the bee was gathering pollen, and without bees, we wouldn't have food. And they actually pollinate about 70 to 80% of our foods. So without bees, we wouldn't be here. The kid was kind of reflecting that back. I said, you're absolutely right. And that's where I was going to go with that. So I said, so let me ask you this. If you look at these, look how tiny that bee is. I said, look what the powerful work that bee does for creation, right? That bee has an amazing job. I said, look at the squirrel, what it's doing. I said, look what it can do. It's gathering up squirrels, it's nesting, and it's doing this creative stuff. I said, even when we look below our feet, there's worms down there digging holes, and what that does is create oxygen in the earth for the trees and other things to thrive. I said, all these tiny creatures are doing amazing things that the Creator made. I says, now look at yourself. You're a two-legged. You have a brain. You can think. You can laugh. You're self-aware. I said, you have all these talents. I said, do you think the Creator would make a bee so tiny and give a great purpose or a worm with a beautiful purpose to bring oxygen to the millions of other living things, and then make you with no purpose? I said, no, of course not. I said, you have a purpose and you just need to be reminded of that. And that's what I'm doing right now, I told him. And a part of that goes into our stories. Our traditional stories are that reminder. They were that connection. We have stories of Hobomok, which is our trickster. We have many stories of Kankantu, the crow, the story of Atuk, deer, and trees, and all these different things that speak and talk to us. And they're not abstract. They're not just fairy tales. Those are the reminders that we're connected to the place. And when I do talks about traditional stories, is that I said they're not abstract. You can go to the lake, you can go to the mountain, you can go to the stones and see these things and connect yourself to these stories, and then be reminded that you are a part of this. It's happening. You're not a bystander, as much like we've been unfortunately told. Between 2014 and 2016, right here in Massachusetts, we had 24 Native youth deaths from suicide or overdose. So we were losing about one child a month for 2 years. And that's because of that connection that they lost, much like what I was experiencing as a kid. And because they were told that they don't fit in, they don't belong, or their spirit has been broken, and the lateral violence that we continue to do on each other, because of these painful traumas, these experiences. And how I do it is to wake up every morning and remind myself I have this mission to do, and it really keeps me going. The trauma I experienced from a child, even after sobriety, 31 years, the racism and abuse, and even sometimes the issues within our own communities. I mean, it seems like it's never ending. But as my elders would tell me, I'm going to keep on sharing what I was asked to share, and so that keeps me going. And we have such an important mission because there are so few of those culture keepers out there. And that's why stop sharing the screen now. And that's why these are very important times. And initially I wanted to say, getting more, I guess we're into the talk now, right? But in terms of COVID, I think just us sharing this space right now is healing, because we are social people, right? Our gatherings are important. Us Nipmunks, we have moon ceremonies, planting moon, harvest moon, melting moon, different moon ceremonies for every occasion once a month. So we need to gather, we need to be in that circle and pray and hug, but we haven't been able to do that. And so how are we doing that? So this technology has been helping. And also some of the things we've been doing, having these socially distant gatherings, as I was mentioning earlier, the Okitayo Cultural Center, we've been doing very limited things to do that. And then when you think about that, as we talk about traversing this storm of COVID, as Indigenous people, I forget the percentage now, but a significant number of our people make their living through art, culture. And so we need to travel, and I'm one of them. I've traveled many parts of the world. As I said, I was in Ecuador, and we were heading to Australia, planning that trip. But of course, that didn't happen now, and I don't know what's going to happen with that, along with other trips that we're planning. And before that, I was in, Greenland and Sweden and Iceland, and, all over Canada. And so it's been hard on the people who have, kind of, thrived and survived off of being able to do this kind of work, this kind of, like, what they call it, gig economy, right? And so that really has a deleterious effect on Indigenous people. And of course, secondly, we're no stranger to diseases, and having here on the East Coast during the 2 waves of epidemics, 80 to 90% of our population wiped out because of something the Europeans brought. It really, it's a jarring experience. And since COVID came, we lost, sadly, I'm kind of losing count. It's 9 people from our community have passed, including, as I mentioned earlier, Talpine, our main language teacher, my cousin. And so, and we haven't had the time to mourn him properly in ceremony. And we were planning a memorial powwow this September, but we'll see how that goes. And so, how do we deal with this, right? And so, and we know depression, anxiety, or the big 3, as we call it, alcoholism, depression, and all these things that, affect Indigenous people, disproportionately, brings it on. What was that? Okay. And so, was that a
Is that a
sneeze?
spirit?
I don't know. Yeah. See, these are some of the things. Adult ADD, I get easily distracted. But I want to circle back now because and we can open up in the questions pretty soon. But it's important that I know you mentioned earlier about somebody singing, but I always have my drum and I always have my rattle to share some of our music here. So I would like to kind of shift and do that because music is our healing and it's our connection to everything. Those vibrations are really universal. And so I want to start off with a rattle song. And so here in the Northeast, we have many types of songs, and the rattle songs are sometimes referred to as longhouse songs. And incidentally, a lot of times the little kids, when I'm going to these schools, do you live in a teepee? I said, no, that's the other people. We don't have teepees here. And so I got it's teepee people, so so I tell them we lived in wigwams and longhouses, and they're round, they're not pointy, so very confusing to kids. So these are this is a longhouse song that we would sing, and this is incidentally a paddle song. If you recall that map I showed you, we live on many riverways, and Nipmuc means people of the fresh water. So we would traverse all these different rivers, the Connecticut, the Merrimack, the French River, the Blackstone, the Monexit River, and all these different areas are our roadways of travel, communication, trade, and so on to kind of relate to different nations around here. And so the paddle songs are very important to us. And so this is one of our paddle songs that we would share when we're in that mashun, or canoe, as they say. Ya hey ya hey ya hey ya hey ya na hey ha na hey ha na hey ya na hey ha na we ha na hey ya na hey ha na hey ha na hey ya na hey ha na we ha na ya hey ya we na kite ya nu chi ne pe ya we ya Nipikitiyam nuwachine na wan. Chemoche munake, chemoche munake, chemoche munake ya ya. Ya 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 ya. Ya na ha na we na. Ha na ha we na. We na ha na we na. Hayana, hey, hana, we hana. Yahweh, Yahweh, na. Kitiyam nuichi, nepe Yahweh, nepe kitiyam nuichi, nenawan. Chemoche munake, chemoche munake, chemoche munake, Yahweh. Good job. So the words in that song are Kitiyang nuwichi nipi awaya nipi kitiyang nuwichi nenawan. That means we live for the water and the water lives for us. And then the second part is Chemoche munake, which means paddle strong, paddle strong. And so that song is it's a reminder, it says we live for the water, water lives for us. And today, or very recently, they had a saying, water is life, right? And so we've been saying this for a long time. As we understood that connection to the water and to the land, in our cosmic connection to all the things around us. And so we're always giving thanks in our journeys. And so it's really just a part of us. And so I want to have my hand drum here, and I have a water drum over there, but I'll share this hand drum. And one of the things when I'm talking to a diverse audience, and I'm sure we heard that axiom about the drum being the heartbeat of the mother, and I think we need to hear it more because it's a true reminder. And when I'm talking to a diverse audience, I would tell them, you hear that, right? It sounds like the heartbeat, right? So then I would say, I want you to look to the person to your left, and then look at the person to your right. Now, you may notice that that person may not be the same color as we say. They may not be the same gender. They may not have the same kind of hair. They may not have no hair. But we are told in my teachings that none of that matters, because if we say what we mean here, this is the heartbeat. Everybody is a heartbeat. So when we're looking at another human being, we look at the heart. And if you look at the heartbeat, all that other stuff just fades away. All those other issues about what you're seeing, giving you a hard time about the way that person's color is or their gender. Remind yourself, that's a heartbeat you're talking to, just like you. So I want to share a song. Yada Yahweh, 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 Weda, Weda, Yahweh, Yahweh, Weda, Weda, Yahweh, All right. Thank you. Thank you. It's always good to, and at that point, if we were all together, we'd be standing up and doing a nice round dance, holding hands and feeling each other's energy. You know, and as I said, I've been talking in so many different places. It's always that good feeling to be in front of the audience and share with them. And then even better, because I'll have my books there to sign and sell. And I always like to remind people when I'm doing that is that if you buy one of my books, you can help me finish my college, you know, help me finish my degree. But if you buy 2 books, I don't have to finish my degree. But seriously, I'm so excited that what education is doing now, and certainly we have a long way to go, but the teachings that are available and becoming more available now in terms of Indigenous pedagogy is really exciting to be a part of that. And I think if anybody's going to adapt, it's Indigenous people. And going back to what you talked about, Teresa, about that the abuse and the hard times. I mean, I think we are like, you know, sometimes we think about history in terms of 500 years, right? But no, we're on a different time scale, right? You know, we're thousands and thousands of years. So I mean, if we survived ice ages and certain other calamities, you know, and so this colonialism is going to be certainly difficult, but and the things that we've gone through, but we've been able to adapt and overcome, and to still speak our language, to still have a drum, you know. And when I talk to white audiences, they are astonished when I tell them that natives were not citizens in 1924. And then it wasn't until 1978 that we could legally finally drum and sing. So that's within my lifetime that the US Constitution didn't apply to me.
That's right.
And I take it a step further that if you look at Black and brown people, the US Constitution only applied to them essentially 20% of its existence. Think about that. Over 200 years of that did not apply to us. We were savages. We were 3/5 of a person. We were property. The Jim Crow laws, segregation, removals, wards of the state, boarding schools. Where in all that were we all men created equal, or and so on and so forth? You know, so it's really shocking, and when you kind of like, you know, unpack it like that to people, which, you know, they don't want to talk about. And so this COVID is really hopefully it will bring out the best of us. And unfortunately, we've been hit harder, you know, as like everything else, you know, disproportionate to our communities, COVID. you know, these ills. And so, and in this informational machine where sometimes many of our youth are not taking it seriously. And, you know, we live in three generational homes, right? You have kids, grandparents, and adults. So, you know, that we have to keep reminding, you can't afford to not be protected, you know, in this time of COVID, you know? And so it's very important, you know, and so try to make those connections in a safe way, you know, like my three sons who live right across the street, basically the next street over. They have not been in this house since COVID. We meet outside. I won't go in their house, you know, and it's really sad. I haven't hugged my kids in almost a year. And because I know they live a more liberal lifestyle, I guess, because they're in their 20s, and I can't take that chance, you know, but we have to be careful, you know, and we'll meet out on our tribal land. We'll stand around a fire, things like that, you know, the best way we could to gather and, you know, give each, you know, air hugs kind of thing. And so these are the kind of things that we can do in this time. And yes, I want to mention food, you know, and healthy lifestyles. And so, you know, this tribal work is my life, but I found another passion in my 50s. I became an avid surfer, and I just never thought I would fall in love with surfing. I mean, we're on the ocean. I've been there all my life, but never thought I would like want to pick up a surfboard. And I learned so much about that sport, and it's really an indigenous sport. Something else appropriated by the whites, by the way. And I learned a lot about the surfing, and it's a really way to connect back to that water in a very powerful way. And so I really enjoy doing that. And but in order to surf, you have to really be in shape, and you have to really be healthy, and you have to be a good swimmer, because you know, your life is you know, it's you know, you can never be prepared enough to be in the ocean, you know, no matter what. I've been on there all my life, and the ocean is she's her own lady, you know. I don't care who you are. It's if she decides it's your time, you're gone. So the best you can do is be prepared, be a good swimmer, take precautions, and we're also happy to be fortunate to have our waters filled with lots of sharks, lots of great whites and tigers, and so and my relatives tell me sometimes don't go out there, but I says, you know, I love surfing, I gotta go, I gotta get out there, you know. Those sharks, they're beautiful, you know, they're beautiful creatures, and you know, and I take precautions, I make sure there's no seals around, you know, and so I do it at my part, but I want to be able to spend that time, and I talk to the water, and I talk to those sharks. I said, thank you for letting me share the space, and you know, and hopefully it'll go okay, but I want to be able to share that space, and so it's hard to explain to people, you know, when you have that love for something, and that, you know, it's just important to you to be able to do that. And in the same way, I say, you know, if we get into a car, you know, every day we don't not drive because we're afraid to get into a car accident. I mean, if that logic works in that application. But along that lines, I wanted to talk about eating healthy too. And since you know, I've been eating even more healthier, lots of kale and spinach and yogurts, and very little fried foods at all. You know, we grew up on bannock, and you know, fried bread I really try to stay away from. That's like maybe once a year I'll do some fried bread, or twice a year, because we've been locked up, right? So and I remind our people that's not our traditional foods. Like some of the traditional foods here in the East were you know, the corn cakes and the deer meat and the Three Sisters stew, all very healthy stuff with lots of amino acids and proteins and very little fat, like no sugars. The natural sugars that we had were from all the different berries that we had here, and the meats we get, the moose. And my cousin over here, he has some moose meat we were eating, and I had some deer meat stew the other day. So these are all the things that, as one of the elders told me, you want to be doing on the outside, you want your body to be doing the same thing on the inside. So if your body is on the inside, Twinkies, Skittles, potato chips, their body's going to be doing something different than what you're trying to do on the outside, right? Yeah. Your body's not reflecting your action. If you want to go running, or you want to take that long walk in the woods, it's not going to reciprocate. So if you give it some good plants around here, and incidentally, we have some of our plant keepers who are been doing tours lately of reclaiming our forests and different plants. Like on my land, I have over 40 different edibles that I didn't know about. And this gentleman, who's actually, he's a white person who was sharing this with me, because I wasn't aware. As I said, my grandmother had that information, and we're trying to reclaim that. And he says, no, thank you, Larry, because you people showed us this the first place. You taught us this. I'm just giving it back to you. So I thought that was very humble of him to share that. And then I realized I have all these different edibles. Some of them I knew, like the berries from when I was a kid, but a lot of them I didn't know, what they were. So it was really exciting to reacquaint myself with these plants, and it's a beautiful feeling, to be there and have that relationship with them. And as one of our Indigenous teachers here, she's Penobscot Just Cree, who's Dr. Just Cree, great person. We had on at our Okitayo Center. She says the plants, they want to help us. They're calling to us. They want to help us all the time. We just got to be able to receive that. So it's a real beautiful thing. We're coming up on 4 o'clock, so if anybody wants to
We do have some questions, Larry.
all right.
And if you don't feel comfortable answering this, I could chime in as well if you want. Okay. Someone did say in schools, everyone is traumatized, obviously, over the pandemic. And trying to navigate through this pandemic, teachers, students, parents, they're all stressed. How can academic leaders lend support rather than add to that trauma?
What we've been doing in our community is the teachers have been coming to the houses and dropping off supplies, dropping off books, sometimes dropping off food, making phone calls, because as we know, some of the communities, they didn't have the Wi-Fi equipment, and we have to be honest here. And I have a funny story about that. It kind of segues, and it's funny, but it's not funny. It's kind of very sad. We were doing a workshop for my Circle Tied to Mother Earth, and I was looking for somebody within one of the local tribal communities to be a spokesperson for this youth. So of course, they needed to be sober. They needed to be somebody upstanding, on good tribal standing and all that fun stuff. So when I called this person, before I can get the word out, he says, Larry, you can't interrupt me. He says, no. He says, what do you want? I'm having a drinking contest right now. So I said, okay, never mind. And so this was somebody I haven't talked to in a few years, so I didn't know what they were up to. So it was like, are you kidding me? And so the reality of it is, the point I was making is that we have a lot of traumatized parents. A lot of these kids are in dysfunctional homes, meaning that we have parents who are struggling emotionally in their own right. So suddenly they have these kids at home that they were more than happy to have somewhere else for those 8 hours during the day, to feed them, to give them the attention that maybe the parent was not equipped to give. So these parents need support too. And so having these educators checking on the parents and asking the parent, how can I help you? How can I support you? Is there anything you need to do to deal with that stress? Because, we're seeing some of the kids are not like signing in, right? They're not going online when they should be. And then, you would think the parent would be on there, but again, like I said, we're dealing with generational trauma. So we're trying to, address the parent as well as the child in many cases. Again, a similar incident, we had the Circle Tied to Mother Earth program that we've been doing now has been going on for 6 years now. And we've been sharing this model with other tribal nations throughout the country. And through those years, we've had many open houses, and sometimes we don't get the parents there that we want to, but then we have to reflect back. They're probably somebody who's suffering from an addiction right now, and many times they were. A lot of the young parents, and sometimes older as well. And so how do we get that kid on the path if their parent is they're in a house where they're struggling? And so we got to be able to address the parents. And again, this was something that Western medicine, Western treatment was not addressing the whole family. Whether it's we're teaching our kids, you got to look them in the eye. And some tribal cultures, we don't look people in the eye, or you got to talk to the grandparents, or and they're hearing different things about school. Some of those grandparents were traumatized in school, so it's you can't talk so lofty about education where somebody was abused in that place. Even me myself, it took me a long time to see school as something of value because of the abuse I went through there. A funny story about my mom's brother, uncle. He's passed now. His nickname was Brother. And of course, like I said, they were all farmers. They grew up in the country, and they didn't go to school. They didn't have to. But sometimes they'll decide to send them. And so by the time he was 12 years old, he was going to go to school for the first time. And the schools were just in one house. in the area. So everybody, whether you're age 10 or 20, they're all in there. And so my uncle, he was about 12 years old, and he would tell this story when he was feeling a little tipsy. The only time he'd talk about it. Creator rest his soul. Miss you, brother. And he would talk about how that day he went to school, and the teacher announced him. He says, "Hello, class. This is Benjamin Phillips, and we have this Indian that's going to join us in the class." And when the teacher said that, he told them, "I have to go to the bathroom." And the bathroom was outside because they had outhouses. And when he went out there, he ran his tail all the way back home and never came back, because now they outed him, right? He was afraid. What were they going to do to him? He was afraid to go back. And so this is the story that they can't conceptualize in terms of the American education system, how it was been there to control, contain, and manipulate our identity to something that we are not. And whether it's a mascot today, whether it's people really not understanding, or where it's Native culture isn't elected, where it's really the foundation of American history, these are all the issues that America needs to come to terms with.
That's right. We still have a lot of work to do, Larry.
Mm-hmm.
We sure do.
Absolutely.
And I just want to add to that too, you know, about her question and not wanting to add stress and trauma. You know, you can't put everybody in the same box. You know, we all have different lives. We are all being affected by this pandemic in different ways. You know, so when I'm talking to school teachers and principals, you know, don't send out an assignment and expect them to do it to be done the next day. Be flexible. You know, give them a week to do an assignment. If you need to speak with a parent, don't send a message home with the child saying, "I need to see you immediately." These are different times. You know,
Absolutely.
People are stressed. People are out of work or working 2 jobs, or, you know, and trying to do this homeschooling education, you know, and losing loved ones. You know, so we have to be creative and we have to be thoughtful and mindful. This is not like it was 2 years ago. So we do need to be flexible, and just show compassion first and foremost. Just show compassion for each other. So, anybody else have questions? I know that somebody asked about your books. We did put the link to your books on here so they could go get them, Larry. Larry, you also promised me that you were going to send me some links to some books so that we could put them on our website. And I hadn't forgotten about that.
Oh, did you? I think I sent one of you have the Circle Tide, right? The Circle Tide curriculum?
I didn't see it. Did we see it, Julia? I don't know. We'll go back and look, but I don't remember seeing it. But I'll go back and look.
Julia,
but we
yeah. I think I
Julia's like,
yeah.
Anybody else have questions? We have 20 more minutes if anybody wants to ask Larry anything. I think you've been great. I think you're exactly what we needed today, what I needed today, especially. I love, you know, what you're doing. I think that's wonderful. I think it's important. We do need something to break the cycle. We really do. You know, I just want good things for my people. I do, all of us. And just like with your story, was very similar to my story. And, you know, I think about that a lot. And like I was telling you before, I still deal with these things even today. I still, if someone, like, my radar is real sensitive, if that makes sense. Like if somebody says something, it triggers almost kind of like PTSD of how my past negative experiences were. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does, absolutely. And I think, and I share this sometimes humorously about my writing and my poetry. It seems to be inspired by all that pain. You know, a lot of my writings are, you know, and so it really, because that was kind of my outlet to let that loose. You know.
Yeah.
Exactly, I do, and I'm still not, you know, you know, we talk about healing. It's a process. You know, I'm still, you know, I talk about that story, you know, like it was yesterday. So I still feel all those different things and being called names, and, you know, you're in places where the people you're supposed to trust are hurting you. So it's certainly, yeah.
Absolutely. Does anybody like to share a story or anything like that, or any advice that you would give? I'm going to ask people to do something. If you know of anybody in your community that maybe you could reach out to, that you know that may be hurting or going through some rough times, or even just lonely, wear a mask, social distance, maybe visit them, bring them bring a gift them with something. Just do something so that they know that there are people out there that love them and care for them, because we all have people out there that love us and care for us, every one of us. Just like what Larry said, we all have a purpose here on this earth. Each and every one of us has a purpose here on earth. We just have to find out what that is. So I'm asking each one of you to do that this week, just a little gesture to anybody, just to make them feel better. I bet it goes a long way. So. Judy asked what training, hold on. Okay. What training would you recommend for educators to make connections with their students and their families in non-judgmental and compassionate ways?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you go to our Okitayo.org website, we have some of the videos up there that we've from past trainings that we have, whether it's medicine or traditional medicine or the education system and mascots and things like that. And it does segue into that, the teacher-parent relationship. It might not be directly that in those specific talks, but I think that's a good starting point. Those some of those talks there, and we're going to be uploading several more. We're going to be holding a again, socially distanced, of course, a presentation on land back and a good allyship, and I think a lot of that is going to intersect with those questions.
And then Kim asked, how do we communicate the knowledge, care, benefits, supporting one another through holistic means outside of treatment services?
I think that's when our communities come in, the leaders in our community, the culture keepers, to share that. I think that's how that's going to take place. And that's important. I think that we have our own agency. You know, we keep our traditional agency with ourselves in terms of how that information is shared, who it's passed to in that sense, and how it best reflects our needs. Because you know, that's part of the mission of Okitayo, was to like be a place for Native people. And sometimes we'll get non-natives who want to come and do things. They say, no, this is our place to thrive and grow and learn and do different things. So we need more places like that where we can just self-actualize in, you know, in artistic, educational, and whatever habit may be.
Yes, guys, we're going to send you a link to his website. Okay, thank you, Julia.
Julia's on
I
it.
appreciate that. Yep. Okay, and all of your books are listed on your website, right, Larry?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And we did some talks. I did a talk with Bunker Hill College in Boston, exactly to that. Educators and the key is to reach out to Indigenous educators, find Indigenous books, bring in those scholars to teach about that land, about that area, and bring their perspective into the conversation. And it's important that they center that conversation. I would add to that, emphasize that. I mean, because sometimes allies run into problems. For example, we had a reconciliation meeting with some of the churches in the entire Western Mass. There was a group of different churches and Catholic churches who wanted to reconcile their role in the doctrine of discovery, and as well as some of the boarding schools. So they came on and wanted to hear some of our stories. And one of the things I said, as Mark Charles would say as well, if some of you might know, they cannot lead that conversation because it would not have the integrity that it needed to be. So that conversation needed to be led by Indigenous people, which we did, because you can't have the perpetrators of these atrocities leading the conversation, because then that creates the narrative and the breadth of where the parameters may lie and not lie. So it's important that we be able to expand and express in our own ways.
This one's interesting, Larry, if you want to answer this. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to see my computer. Someone asked, it's been suggested to them that benefits of engaging in traditional ceremonies are limited to those who are genetically, culturally connected to the traditions. Is there an opportunity to share the positive vibes beyond this community? And that's a great question.
Oh boy, let me sit up. Okay. And this question came up when I was doing the last talk. Somebody asked if They said, can a white person connect to your land the way you do? And I said, I don't think so. And then I needed to explain what I was talking about that. I says, when you have millions of displaced Native people, and to have you talking about enjoying and taking benefit from something that you may already have access to without them having that access right now is continuing that violence. And I said, and I don't mean that in any harsh way. I said, it's important to recognize that privilege that you have to even be able to choose whether or not you want to do that or not. That choice was taken away from many. And I think that to be able to practice those, it's going to have to be based on that tribal community. That's a very big question. And right now we're seeing, yeah, so there's so many different things going on in terms of Native identity imposters and different things like that, which is very sad. And that, again, that's more violence, I would say, you know, and so, and it's a real tough question because, you know, we really need to, so, and I'll go back to the beginning when the Europeans came in, so to kind of unpack this, right here in my own territory, you know, so, and we know the story about when the 102 weak and weary pilgrims landed here. Massasoit and the Wampanoag people supported and helped them. So in that big initial exchange, our people saw other two-legged human beings, no different than them, to express, share, and take part in the land with the same equal understanding. In other words, the ceremony tradition was not something that was going to be esoteric, because if you were going to be here, you needed to know what we know, so you can have that same relationship. So in other words, if you don't know how to relate to the land, you're going to mess it up. If you don't understand that balance that we know, you're going to mess it up. Now, holding that thought right here, we got to look over here on this side. We got this stuff. We have the exploitation. We have the abuse of Native culture where it was denied, where people are taking their own liberties and taking and sharing and teaching this Native culture and commodifying it and make it a product of their own and commercializing it. And so how do we protect the remaining cultures and traditions without that happening? And so it's a very tough balance to look at these two things, because on one hand, if white America doesn't know what we know, we're all gonna suffer because of it. And we're seeing it now with the Industrial Revolution, with the toxics, because they don't know. If they had that same understanding, they would change, right? And you know, and we talk about perspectives and understanding. The colonial mindset and the indigenous mindset are completely opposite. They couldn't be not more farther away from each other in terms of how we see gender, in terms of how we see the world, in terms of how we relate to animals. It's all completely different. How we value things in terms of capitalism versus a shared society. Individualism versus a community mindset. A Native child is growing up to think about his community. An American child is growing up to think about, what can I get? I'm gonna get mines. And that's just what we're taught. And so all these things need to be addressed. And so, but tribal communities are now under attack. People are taking up space, and it's usually around money and commodity and commercialism, where they can kind of, I got to tell you, we're actually doing a film this summer about that. I'm going to hold up something. My book here, The Morning Road. So on the cover is my my son Inoki, who's now he's my other baby. He's my second oldest. After, you know, I had the new one now, so he used to be my baby. He's now 23, and when he was 8 years old, we went to we were in Montreal performing because we were a powwow family going around, me and all my kids, and we used to be known as the Native American Partridge Family. Some of you older folks will get that one. Anyways, this photo is was taken by a very well-known photographer from France who was in Montreal at the time, and she became actually a good friend of my family and the tribe, and she, you know, she got permission to take this photo, and of course, I ended up using it on my book cover. And anyway, this photo was pretty iconic, and she won some awards for it and so on. But anyway, there was this guy recently in Canada, in Quebec, who somehow got a hold of this photo, this picture of my son, and was going around claiming to be a shaman and he would show this PowerPoint, and part of that PowerPoint was showing this picture of my son. There was a few other photos that he had of him, and saying this was his grandson, and that he was going to be the future chief. And so he was using the image of my son as a part of his ploy to graft people out of money. And so we're actually going to be doing a story on that, you know, stolen identities and what it feels like. It's such a violation of our personhood, you know. And he even got a new name. His name was Jeremy for the guy's story, you know. And so this is a real problem, right?
Yeah.
And then when I see people like you know, very effusively defending that kind of action, it gives me mixed feelings, because on the one hand, I respect everybody's humanity, but on the other hand, you're dealing with a culture and a people who have been exploited, used, and misused over and over again. And so let's get this right first before we start ingratiating ourselves to people who are posing a more harm than good. And so, yeah, so he was way up in Quebec City, which is like 8 hours from here. And luckily, I have tribal communities like the Etchkamek people who I've shared with through the years, who are in the area. And they saw that video, said, "That's Larry's son." And they gave me a call. I said, "Wait a minute, there's a guy up here showing your kid's picture." And then next thing you know, he was outed, and it became a big stink. And they chased him out of the community because he was living on in the Huron community. He made it, you know, he kind of made his way in there and kind of weaseled his way in, and was living in the community as his supposed shaman. And so the Huron got rid of him, and I don't know where he's at now. But so I share that story just to kind of express, and that's just one example of what happens. You know, how this causes real harm. And
I have a question for you, Larry.
Yep.
Along those lines, I'm working on something now. I've been asked to do this for several school systems. As you know, a lot of non-natives work in Native communities. So how do I have met, I'll give you an example, being a school principal. I've met some very good teachers there for the right reasons, and then I've met teachers there that was not there for the right reasons, and the ones that were not there for the right reasons can do more harm than they can good. I have had non-Native teachers reach out to me and ask me how they can work in Native communities, that they want to work in Native communities, that they want to be part of the community, that they want to do good things for the Native communities, but they don't feel comfortable. They don't want to overstep. They don't want to go where they're not welcomed, but they do want to make that connection. And as we know, a connection with a child is very important. Right. So what would you suggest for something like that?
That's a great
question. What are your thoughts on that?
In one of our recent talks at Okitayo, a white gentleman, much like what you said a similar thing. And he was in a community, I think in Montana, and he came with that same kind of reverence and you know, and kind of idea. And he got ran out of there, and he was really upset, and he was telling me about it. And I says, all I can say is keep coming, try again. I said, keep going and keep going. I says, because it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be hard. It might have been something you said that wasn't right, that kind of touched people the wrong way. It might have been something that they were dealing with at the time. And I says, the hurt is in pain in these communities all over is very deep. And so you as an ally are going to have to deal with that, you know. And it kind of goes back to like Teresa and I's, like we talked, our childhood, you know, there's no getting around it. People are going to be uncomfortable. You know, and I was just talking in the class about disrupting the colonial powers. When you hear somebody saying a racist joke or saying a joke about a Native person, and you may feel like you don't want to say it, but disrupt it. You got to break it. If we don't stop those kind of things, it won't happen. So even when people have the best intentions, they're going to probably feel some of that, because there's a lot, you know, there's a lot to come to terms with. As my grandpa would say, it's 50 miles in the woods, it's 50 miles to come out. You know, you don't get to get unscarred in this. I mean, you're talking about genocide, you're talking about hegemony, you're talking about enslavement, you're talking about boarding schools. Nobody is going to come out of this without a scar, without feeling the tears, without feeling the pain. You know, it's impossible now. We're all in it too deep, you know? So you just got to find your way and see where your story is going to fit in. And so when you go to these communities, and if you feel like your heart is in the right place, keep coming back. If they're swearing and yelling at you, keep coming and tell them, as long as they don't call the cops on you, tribal police, you know. So, but anything short of that, try to write a letter, tell them, find out somebody else, say, you know, I'm sorry and I want to help. And I can't tell you how many times we run into those kind of things. People, have to come back and make amends because they don't know how to talk to us. And that's part of the way it's been because of the lack of understanding.
And I've always said too, do not go in there with the notion of you're telling them what to do or telling them what you think is right or how things should be done, because that is not what we want and that is not the approach, and we're done with that.
Absolutely.
If you want to go in there and do things their way and support them, then that's wonderful. But I hear so many times how they want to go in and tell them what's best for them.
Right.
How they should do this and how they should do that. And to me, that's not respecting sovereignty. That's being disrespectful to
Right.
Native
And to be completely honest, me as a writer, and I've as I said jokingly earlier about being a powwow singer and storyteller, I was very fortunate to have that platform through my early years of sharing story and traditions from my tribe. And so by the time I began writing in 2010, my first book, I had people who would listen, but still I had some resistance because the publishing world is very ugly. And many times people wanted to listen to white scholars over what a Native person was saying because they had that connection, because they had the influence. And so and it was uncomfortable to hear what I was saying about the atrocities and about how, people who look like them cause me harm. And so this is something that we have to be aware of too. And so this is why centering Indigenous voices in this conversation is so crucial, and going back to talk about, people portraying Native people and so this is all part of that same
How
problem.
do you raise your hand? Do that first one.
Just speak. Hi, Beverly.
Hi. I just wanted to kind of respond, if that's okay, in a healthy, good way, hopefully. Larry, I agree with you. With this COVID going on our reservation, everything's leaning more to a certain group of experts, and never has the Native people been heard of what they felt about about the COVID, not the Native, but the COVID-19. What is their thoughts about it? And they're just totally left out. And I just feel like Natives are left out again, but yet we're dealing with it personally at our homes and losing loved ones and being maybe in the purple, and we understand, but yet we're never asked, what do you think the community should do together? And the support, we can be part of that support for our youth also, but yet once again we're shoved to the corner with no how do you say it, being recognized for things that we could input for our community also. Well, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Beverly. And that paternalistic attitude is it's very sad, and it's and it's ongoing. And I think that's what all of us are here talking and trying to disrupt that system that keeps that in place. And that Indigenous knowledge is just as valuable, if not more, because we know this is our land. We've been here a very long time. We're very familiar with what the needs are.
Someone else I think had a question too. Dean.
Hi, Larry. This is Dean Seneca, Seneca Nation, Haudenosaunee, Cattaraugus, Beaver Clan. I have to chime in on this, and I don't mean to offend anybody on the call, anybody that's non-Indian, but I think it's time for a change. And we have many non-Indians working in our Indian organizations. Many non-Indians working in tribal government. We have many non-Indians working through many aspects of Indian country, which are jobs that are intended for Indian people, okay? I mean, when the money is appropriated from Congress, they give it to the tribal nations, the tribal organizations, the epidemiology centers for natives and to hire natives. And, the old excuse was, well, we just don't have qualified Native people. And you could have used that excuse 20 years ago. It was definitely used 30 years ago, and most likely 50 years ago. But today we have a lot of young, educated, very talented Native people who, quite honestly, need jobs. And I'm sorry, and we appreciate everything that the white people or non-natives have done in our communities, and we appreciate all the help. But it's time to start hiring our own people. So what do we tell these Indian organizations? What do we tell these tribal leaders? What do we do in order to get these organizations to hire Native people? I'm just going to say, go look at, and I don't want to call anybody out, but I will. Go look at NCAI and look at how many Native people they're actually hiring. Go look at NIHB and look at how many people. Look at the 12 tribal epidemiology centers, of which probably 10 of them are run by non-Indians. Okay. How do we change this? Because you know what? In many cases, I would rather have an Indian in those positions that does nothing versus some of these non-Indians in those positions that are destructive or leading the program down the wrong path. So what do we do to get more Native people in these positions? My question is. Thank you very much.
Can I say something? Thank you, Dean, for that. I think that's very important. I absolutely respect non-Native people working in Native communities if you're there for the right reasons. So if there's anybody here on the call that is non-Native, this is nothing against you at all, but I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I could say that one of the problems is we are the problem. We have a situation in Native communities, whereas if you are educated, you become a threat. I have experienced that from my own Native people. That's one thing that needs to stop. Larry, do you want to add to that? And we could have a whole series of sessions on this too.
Thank you, Dean. I agree with him 100%. Thank you. That's I mean, you said it all. It's so true. And you're right. You know, when I talk to kids on campuses, I say, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, I mean, this was just like, I look around in awe at the diversity, right? Because in my mother's generation, you know, in some states, interracial marriage was illegal. And in my grandfather's time, you know, Geronimo was still a prisoner of war. So today, 2021, you know, we have many, many college educated kids, you know, but in previous years, from kindergarten to college, you would never see a Native American teacher. We would never have somebody to see somebody who looked like us and represented our community. But now that is changing. And so the goal of an ally, a true ally, would be to step out of the way, right? And to let these people that you're initially trying to help reach their goals that they need to on their own. As Dean said, there's so many talented young Native scholars. And I was with Ty Lodgepole and we were at Jacob's Pillow. You know them? Yeah. And they were at Jacob's Pillow and they were talking about their degrees that they got in various colleges. And so, you know, you have these impressive young Natives who are excelling in their culture as well in academia. And so this is like really exciting, right? And so we have to honor that. We have to find places within their communities to continue to thrive, you know. And again, I'm in my 50s now, and all my kids are in college, and we have all these young. We have a scholars program here. Our tribal youth are, because of the circle tied to Mother Earth, they're thriving now. Many of them are into their culture, and they're doing well in school. They're goal oriented, you know, and so they're having a different experience than when I did, albeit still hardships, as I mentioned earlier. And so we have to keep on promoting that. And I really hope that day comes that you may see one non-Native teacher instead of hundreds and hundreds across the country, you know. And yeah, it's a problem. And like I said, I don't want to. Well, I know we're getting low on time, but even someone like myself as an artist, I've had a hard time breaking through because of non-Native writers and scholars who are kind of taking up space where I should have had a voice, even within my own areas. And it's still happening now. And you know, so it's a problem.
Yes, it is. I want to respect the, some people had their hands up for a while, so I want to respect them even though we're out of time. So I'm going to give them just a few minutes each to go ahead and ask a question or to make a point. Is that okay with you, Larry?
Oh, absolutely.
And okay. Mike, and I'm going to say Ty, is T-S-Y.
Sia.
Okay. Hi, Sia. That's a beautiful name. I love it. So why don't you go first, and then Mike will hear from you right after that, and then we'll be done for the day. But this is great conversations, and these are conversations I think we need to continue. So
Yes.
go ahead.
So thanks. I think his name was Dean for saying that, because I agree that it should be native hire first. However, what I've run into as a young person, I'm 47, is that I live in Alaska, and it is limited. People don't want to move up here, and we do have limited people that have attended college. So, and I also have come across non-native people or Caucasian people that do well and are in their right mind to help our people. However, I think the main point is to educate and tell them that it's important to listen to the community and listen to what they have to say, because you'll learn something, because it's from a different perspective, it's from a different culture, and you're in their territory right now, you're on their land, you're working with their kids. And so it's important to listen. And I learned that in behavioral health also, because so many times when you're a counselor, you want to quick to not judge, but quick to try and fix. But that's not what you're there for. You're there to listen. You're there to let them speak and learn from their perspective and walk in their shoes, just spiritually, if you want to think of it that way, but educate and respect what other non-natives have gone through, because they could have been bullied by a native person, I've heard as well. So again, educate, and it needs to be done. And thank you.
Thank you. And I totally agree with what you said. And Della also put in the chat, and she brought up a very good point. She has a master's degree, and she agrees that non-natives in higher education who have an education, they are outs by the natives that have an education are outs by the non-natives, and then natives that have an education are outs by their own natives. So it does work both ways. Mike, I'm going to let you talk, and then we're over our time. But this is great conversation.
I want to be so grateful to Larry and to Dean in particular for approaching such a difficult topic in a good way. There are some models that may be worth investigating. I was part of the Behavioral Health Aid Initiative in Alaska, where we train village counselors to become the behavioral health leaders in their own native communities. So if there are tribal organizations that want to move in that direction, there are some very good models that are available that can really help native people to take charge of their own, particularly their own behavioral health training. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Can you send me that information? Do you mind?
Sure.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this is something that we need to.
Also a good resource for that, because Ray was with YKHC.
Thank you, Mike. But this is something that's also very dear in my heart. We have a lot of work to do in that area. Absolutely. Great questions, Dean. Larry, this was wonderful. I so appreciate this. I think it was exactly what we needed today. And I'm going to be reaching out to you too. I'm going to be wanting to do some more work with you in the near future. You're a great inspiration to us. So I thank you for that very much. So,
thank you so much. And
yeah.
Thank you everybody for sharing your time with me. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you all. And, I know we could just go all night. This is such a good conversation. It really feels good. And it feels good for me to be here with all of you in a cyber kind of way. So that's healing in itself. So I thank you, and hope to get to know you all in the future.
Yes, you're going to be back, Larry.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Have a great Thursday. Yes, you can get a certification. You'll get the notes. My email will be on the notes, just send me your information that you need to get a certification for today's event. Again, thank you. Larry, I feel your spirit. So
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katavatamish. Thank you.
Okay. All right. See you guys later.